Van time again. I'm just continuing with the engine job. Pistons out. I was just going to recap for those watching, although most of you viewing have probably seen the foregoing videos on this van. But just to recap, I bought it and I was aware sort of on the test drive of a head gasket problem. So I couldn't put that off, of course. So first thing I did almost when I got it home was set to work on that. Took the cylinder head off, and it was quite clear why there was a head gasket fault, because the person, whoever installed it, had only fitted the steel part of the gasket. It should, of course, be a copper, asbestos and steel sandwich. As a result of that, very, very poor standard of workmanship, the seeds of doubt were sown in my mind. So I wanted to go over the rest of the engine, because when I removed the cylinder head and saw this, of course, I was presented with that on number 4. Those marks there, which it could have been anything going off that head gasket. God only knows what else had been bodged up. So for peace of mind, for the sake of reliability and the life of the engine, I removed the sump. I did that to check the condition, to check the main bearings were correctly installed and torqued, and also to remove this piston on number 4, because those marks could have been either a gudgeon pin working its way loose, or broken piston rings. It could have been anything, and the only way of finding out was to remove the piston. So that I managed to do. It was quite easy actually with the sump off. Just undo the bolts there and push it up to out the top of the block. They have to be removed up through the top, otherwise the skirt fouls the crank shaft and maybe even some parts of the block casting. So they've always got to be pushed up and out of the top. The bearings are actually, they're fairly new, so it must have had a regrind. Well, I know it's had a regrind because it's 10 undersize. And the Van der Velde bearings, a very, very reputable quality make. Slightly scuffed, ever so slightly, but I'll put them back in, they'll be fine. The gudgeon pin, the little end, are held in with circlips, which is a good thing, and as you can see, they are intact, as are all the piston rings. If this bastard camera focuses, it keeps doing this. It does its autofocus and it doesn't focus on where I want it to. And it's focused now anyway. So the circlips are fine, as are the piston rings. There's a bit of scuffing to the piston skirt. You'd often get that. Some pistons add an extra ring at the bottom to try and prevent that, you see. Some scuffing on the thrust side of the piston, which is to be expected. But the rings, well, first of all, the pistons themselves, they've got markings on them. 0.030. 0.030, and that means it's 30. I don't know if it's 30 thousandths or 30 hundredths. I think it's 30. It's got to be. No, I'm not sure actually, but that's irrelevant anyway. They're oversized. This block has been bored out, and oversized pistons are fitted to suit. You also see the word front there as well on the crown. Well, that simply means that should be facing towards the front of the engine, and they all are. All the pistons are. Now, these would have been supplied. Well, you can see there that top ring is stepped, and that was to avoid the ridge at the top of the bore, which on a reboard block you wouldn't have anyway. But to an existing cylinder block that's just been horned and you needed to fit new pistons, you could just horn it and fit these ridge dodger top rings. Well, that's fine. I'm quite satisfied with that because the pistons would have been supplied as a set with the rings already assembled. So that's absolutely fine, no issues there. I'm not going to bother checking the other three now I've seen that. What else was I looking at? Oh yeah, that oil hole, that's important. See that little hole? That's the drilling to allow oil to be squirted onto the cylinder boards, onto the cylinder walls, and that needs to be clear, of course. It's actually pretty clean, so I'm going to put it all back together and get the sump back on. The sump is back in place. I've finished all this now underneath the centre tie rod, etc., and gearbox clutch cover plate. Not an easy job to get that back on because the oil pickup, it's got sort of like a sprung plate where it goes into the oil strainer in the sump. So a bit of a faff to get that in place and the bolt started, but it's there. And I've just greased one half of the gasket to stick it to the sump. Just some grease around there. You can see that oozing out. Absolutely no need nor use of silicone sealant whatsoever. So, going indoors, as it were, the next job now is just to clean up the face of the cylinder block, which won't take long, and then it's just a simple case of reassembly. So with a bit of luck, I should have it running today in a couple of hours. It's been a long time, but opportunity for working on it has been limited through through my ordinary job and bad weather. It's just been raining almost every day, so I can't really do much engine work when it's raining. What else was there? I think that was it. Yeah, just give this a clean up, remove the remains of that tappet chest gasket there, and I'll fit the new cylinder head gasket and the cylinder head, so I'll carry on. I'm just going round oiling the bowers with some engine oil, because of course I've drained the sump in order to get the bottom end seen to, which incidentally was fine. I don't know if I've mentioned that already, but I found it to be all okay. But of course it'll take a while, as it does after an oil change. It'll take a while for pressure to build up and reach all the working parts of the engine. The bowers were dry except when I sprayed them with WD-40 after I removed the cylinder head to act as a preservative and anti-corrosive coating. But just give a squirt of oil round the edges of the pistons. Be pretty generous with it. That'll soak in for a bit, and as soon as this starts rotating, it'll be nice and lubricated. So the time has now come to fit the new cylinder head gasket, which is a proper PN set, so that's going to be a guaranteed fit. And I got this from John Davis. He's a trader at many of the auto jumbles, including Bewley. Nice bloke. Wouldn't have any hesitation in recommending him. Really good bloke, knows his stuff. So for most of my gaskets and engine bearings, piston rings, I just go straight to John at Vintage and Collector's Car Spares. Now, taking note of this gasket, this is how it should look, you see. It's a sandwich. Steel on one side, asbestos in the middle, copper on the top. And they generally always go copper side up. It says in the book to add well seal, smear well seal on both sides of the gasket, but in this case, because it's a new gasket, there isn't any need for that, because they were treated with a sort of tacky substance as it was. So that can go in just as it is. There's no need for anything on that. If it was a used gasket, then yes, I would use well seal, but there's no need to do it now. The other thing is, if I was building this engine from scratch out of the vehicle, as I did with the Morris 1000 one, at each stage of the process, after I'd inserted the pistons and done up the bearings, I would turn the engine to see how it feels, if there's any tight spots, and observe just things going up and down and working. Well, I've already given this a turn on the starting handle and it's fine. I only removed number 4, if you remember. And I'm not turning it over again because the fuel pump is still attached and petrol ends up squirting out. So I will pop this in place. There you go, front, so that's marked up as the front. So I'll get this in place. Okay, so this, I'm nearly gonna call it a day. I'll call it a draw soon. refitted the head. I've just put the rocker cover on as I've not done the valve gear just yet. I want to clean that first. But yeah, cylinder head back on, all torqued down. Side tappet chest cover back on. That's quite an awkward little job because of these reinforcement rails. Very hard to get a spanner on the bolt heads there without it slipping. A ring spanner won't fit in there because it's too narrow, but it's there anyway. I'm just going to do the exhaust manifold, and yeah, that silicone sealant, that shit, it really is everywhere. They've used that stuff everywhere. Oh hum. And that is where I'm up to at the moment. As you can see, there's still a few little jobs, reassembly jobs to do. The water pump, the distributor, the manifold, etc. Just finishing off really, reassembly. So we're getting perilously close to firing the thing up again, or at least attempting to. The radiator as well, that had to have a repair. I'll deal with that in the next instalment. But otherwise, yes, everything's coming together at last. And I'm confident that it will shape up to be a very good engine indeed. Hope you will join me for the next one.